Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to this morning's Income Tax Subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee of the House of Representatives. If you don't mind, if you'll just join me with a quick word of prayer. We'll open with a quick word of prayer and then get started hearing these bills. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of this day. Lord God, we just ask for your wisdom, guidance, protection be on us as members, on those that are trying to influence legislation up here, Father. Just pray your will be done in all facets of this. Protect our families and those we love, Father, and all this ask and pray in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, we got House Bill 461 this morning. We got Representative Thomas is going to explain the measure to us. Where are you? Here we go. And I did want to just confirm this is a first hearing only on this measure.
So, good morning, committee members. I very much appreciate you being here at 8 a.m. So today I'm here to speak about House Bill 461 and just make sure everybody's working off the same number. It's LC 500669S. It does a few things to really help lower the cost of regulatory fees and establish a little bit more consistency across the state, which is better for consumers. Really, the main part of the bill is on the back page. If you flip it over.
And just to be clear, you're working off a committee substitute?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody's got copies of that.
Which it would eliminate one of six methods jurisdictions can use to calculate regulatory fees and modify another method. They can no longer charge a fee based on the cost of a job or percentage-based fees. It has nothing to do with regulatory activity. The modification to Method 5 is that when using the square footage and valuation data to determine the fee, it must be in conjunction with the widely accepted International Code Council formula for new construction projects and extensive renovations. The second thing it does is it reaffirms that proceeds from regulatory fees must go to fund the regulatory activity. And finally, you'll notice cleanup in the professions occupation that are regulated locally. This does not exclude anyone currently being regulated by local jurisdictions. A similar version of this bill was passed by the House and a different version passed by the Senate last year. This version is the compromising language. My understanding is, and I don't like to speak on behalf of anybody, but the ACCG and GMA are neutral on it, and obviously my small business owners are very supportive. So with that, I'll open if Tucker would like to speak or if anybody would like to speak, but that's my presentation.
I'm sorry, you might have questions. Who's at microphone 7? Here we go. Chairman Martin.
Yeah, Representative, you mentioned that, clean up on line 31. You're removing taxi cab and limousine operators, and then boxing and regular. Where'd that come from again? I'm always careful of cleanup language that tags along with the major portion of the bill.
Yeah. I guess my answer to that is it was a part of the original language that I think is carried through. So if this is something that we need to investigate, I'm fine with it.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to find the origin of it. So maybe somebody else can testify to the origin of it. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I won't put you on the spot on that. We first hearing, we got time to get to that. I was just curious that. What.
Yeah. I think. I don't have the answer. I'll have to get it for you.
We'll work on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a clarification. I feel like that taxi cab piece had something to do with the tax that we put on Uber, and that went over to taxi cabs, and so they were trying to eliminate that. Does anybody remember that at all?
Vaguely, I can look into that for you. It was my recollection that a change a few years back, regulated them in a
No.
different way, which pulled them out from this area of laws.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I felt like that we put, when we finally started taxing ride shares, that we were taxing taxis too, and then they were paying this fee and ride shares weren't, and I felt like there was a conversation, but I don't, like I said, just clarification would be great. Might have just made everybody dumber, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Going back to lines around about 23, or I think you made a couple changes. Basically, what you're saying is that I understand is that you can charge this fee, but it needs to go towards regulatory type, is not into the general funds.
Yeah,
But you,
that's correct.
then you're not requiring the local government to have a separate account. So if their account is a general fund account, how are we tracking it, this piece of money not going towards not going towards the
general fund.
General funds?
That's
How,
correct.
how are they doing that? Well, how's that supposed to be done?
I guess I'm sorry.
You're saying they don't have to have a
Representative Prince.
separate account for the regulatory funds when they collect this? It can go.
Oh, I don't understand. I'm following you on the lines here. So
I guess how we track it if it's not if right now it goes to their general funds. How do you say it's? But then you say above this, it can only be used towards regulatory.
I'm not familiar with
Okay.
how local government tracks their.
And again, I'm trying not to
Yeah,
put anything else on local
yeah,
government. I know you say
yeah.
ACC&G and GMA, they're cool with it, but
I
just-
think what the policy is just. I think the intent is just to make sure that whatever the regulatory fee is, it's actually the cost of what that is, and it's not being used to generate revenue and put into the general operations.
And, I'm going to recognize a couple other people that do have questions, but to Representative Prince's point, it's a little bit vague to me. It says local government shall not be required to establish separate accounts. Well, they're not. Does the account mean the bookkeeping account, or almost going to have some kind of bookkeeping account, not necessarily a separate bank account or other? Maybe somebody from the local government space can help us better understand that language. Representative Saines, microphone 10.
I apologize, I didn't know I.
Okay. Who we got going now? Chairman Martin.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to echo what you said. I believe from days back in local government, I think what they're doing is encouraging them to keep an accounting of it, so that if somebody comes in and then looks at this, that it'll pass the eye test. They don't have to create a separate bank account. They, may not have to keep a detailed transaction. For instance, if an inspector goes on site, they don't bill him out in 10-minute increments, right? His salary doesn't go, or his or her salary doesn't go to that. They don't have to keep it to that level in the books of accounting, but it should pass the eye test that the fees are reasonably used to cover the inspectors. Could be the capital costs, including the trucks and tools. It could be all of those things, but they don't have to necessarily track the inspector's time, in quarter hours or whatever, and allocate time and fully burden labor costs and that sort of thing through a separate account, which is what the chairman helped us with.
Chairman Blackman.
Well, he just addressed it. I was just going to say that the one of the things that, when you're implementing a regulatory fee and you're trying to do it just to cover the cost of implementing that regulation, that we didn't want to be, I guess, overly onerous, and I think that GMA had asked for us to include that in the legislation some time back, and I think Representative Thomas has done so.
Okay. Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this a new fee, or is it just changing an old fee from the way it's calculated?
It's a method. It's changing a method of the way the old fee is calculated.
So what will be the difference in the amount of money collected by the city? Do you have an example of how that will change from the old method to the new?
I don't have a method, but like I said, I think that the whole intent of the bill is that the way it's written is so that way if there are any, they're covering the cost of the regulation, but without actually making additional funds off of it.
So
Yeah.
it's realigning it to be more fair.
That's correct, and it's like I said, this is it supports small business. It's helping our HVAC companies and mechanical contractors, and if we can help small business, I'm for that.
Me
So,
too.
yeah.
One last question. Does this apply to historic renovations?
I
Or any
don't think
kind.
it's got an exemption that doesn't say. I would say any extensive renovation project means valued at 75,000 or more, which is line 79, but it doesn't have a carve out for historic buildings. No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions from members? Do you have anybody who want to present on the bill?
Hey. Tucker, you want to come up here?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
How did you like
I
it?
hadn't seen that, so, yeah, we recognize, Mr. Green.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not going to belabor any points that have already been made, but we've been working, and when I say we, several of the construction trades, home builders, Conditioned Air Association of Georgia that I represent, AGC, realtors, others that are in the trades, plumbing, electricians, for several years. Several versions of this has passed, and what we're trying to do is create a little more consistency across the board. Right now, local governments have 6 different methods they can use to determine those permitting fees, and we're just trying to simplify things a little and make things more fair. The areas we see that sometimes fees, in our view, get a little out of line is using methods 5 and 6, so that's why we wanted some reform there. To make sure that those regulatory fees are approximating the regulatory activity and really what needs to be charged. I do want to thank GMA and ACCG. We have worked with them for the last couple of years trying to perfect this and make sure everyone is comfortable. And I believe, I don't want to speak for them either, but I do believe they are comfortable with the version we have before you. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions there may be.
Not recognized. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank y'all for doing this. I am a developer and a builder, and we face these issues constantly. And I appreciate the fact that the cities and municipalities need to have revenue, and that's what keeps things going. But one thing, I built this neighborhood, built the road, built the sewer, and then built a house, and then paid my plumber to connect the 4-inch line to the sewer that I had built, and it cost me $3,000. And nobody even did anything. And so this would definitely curb that, which I think is extremely important, because they made an account just because we hooked up the sewer, cost a bunch of money, and those prices are passed on to the homeowners, okay? And if we're going to be going through what we've talked about before, the next decade we're building like crazy, I hope. And then we need to get some things in place that monitor this at the start. So thank you for that. I have one question. $75,000 at a extensive renovation project. Is that number too low? Because I don't think 75,000 is as extensive as it sounds right now in the construction world. Also, will this raise fees on smaller projects? So if you have a $50,000 project, you don't have to adhere to the rule. Is that correct?
They would still have to get a permit even if it's below 75,000, but the permit would have to be charged based on 1 through 4, one of those methods, a flat fee, hourly rate, something of that nature. They couldn't use the ICC formula calculation, which takes into effect square footage of the project and things like that. I understand your question on the 75,000. There is always kind of a debate of what is the perfect number. And, I think we kind of went back and forth a little, and that was just the compromise number we came up with.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Fry. Any other questions from members? I think the members would probably be interested in hearing from local government, either GMA or ACCG, if anybody's prepared to testify.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ryan Bowersox of the Georgia Municipal Association, joined with Todd Edwards of ACCG. I don't want to add too much here. It hasn't already been said. Tucker did a great job, and we appreciate the various trade groups for working with us over the last few years. This has been about a 4-year project of going back and forth with finding something we could move forward with and be comfortable with, and we think would be beneficial to, as they mentioned, the consumer, and still helpful to the local government as they attempt to perform this regulatory activity and cover the cost of doing so for the health, safety, welfare of their citizens. So happy to take any questions, or if Todd has anything to add.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd Edwards with ACCG. As Ryan stated, we've been dealing with this legislation, similar legislation on permitting for the past several years. We strive to do our part. We understand there's a housing shortage. Permitting, look at that closely. We don't believe that local government should charge any more than it actually costs them to administer the regulatory process. It's hard for us to justify basing those fees on the cost of the materials alone. We thought this was a great way to work together with those in the development, the contracting business, et cetera, to try to reduce or address some of their concerns, not negatively impact local governments, and help move the state forward.
Recognize Representative Carter's got a question for you.
Thank you so much. Is there a way moving forward, if this legislation passes, that maybe once a year you could do send us some paperwork on various revenues versus expenses in like 10 jurisdictions each year, just so we can make sure that's tracking like we wanted it to? I mean, is there a way to do that? Because I think if, you know, the fear of Big Brother looking in kind of sometimes will keep people honest and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's something you guys can put together for us.
We'd have to get with you offline, Representative. I'd have to, ask our surveying. But we're happy to work with you on it.
Yeah. I mean, just something to know that, the thumb's still on, and just because this passes, we don't turn our back on it. I think it's important.
Recognize Representative Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great legislation here, and I really like it. How many cities or counties is this going to affect in a big way? Is it a lot, or is it few, or most of them not doing it this way now? So give me a little snapshot.
I think this will affect a number of jurisdictions who are using method number 6, who are calculating it based on that cost. So this will eliminate that among the counties in the various cities, a number of them are probably using this cost method that will have to go back and recalculate their fee schedule. But it shouldn't change the landscape entirely to the point where we thought it would be overly burdensome for every local government in the state. But I do think it would be meaningful across the state for sure.
And as stated below, there are currently one of 6 methods local governments can use. I don't have the numbers on how many are using 6, but they certainly have the other 5. So I'm unaware of, exactly how many it will impact.
Yeah. If I can make that work. So, as I understand it, basically is to shine a spotlight on the fee structure to make sure there's basically no abusive billing by any local government to the detriment of good quality projects, and just dinging a contractor's pocketbooks because they can. So I applaud the author's legislation, the legislative intent, but I am going to go back to Representative Prince's question, and it sort of speaks to Representative Carter's follow-up, is that it's great to have the methodology in place to shine the spotlight on it, but if you don't have any kind of accounting or any kind of testing or auditing procedures in place, how do you ever measure that local governments are following this? Would it be on just somebody applying for a permit reporting it to someone, or how do you follow up on it? How do you measure it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My understanding, I'm not the finance guy for ACCG, but we can still track and do in our accounting system. The language in there just doesn't require us to have a separate banking account for that, but we can still track it.
Is that something that would be easily reportable back in some public forum? I don't know if it'd come back to the Ways and Means Committee or be some way to track it to make sure that the industry or whomever the affected class of businesses are would be able to understand that there's no abusive, that everybody's playing by the rules, if I'm making sense. Is that some kind of methodology we could consider?
That is certainly something we can try to look into. I have no idea. I to be honest, do not know for every jurisdiction what that would entail of reporting those numbers at this time, but definitely something we could look into and try to follow up with you.
Representative Carter, you got a follow-up question? Carpenter. I'm sorry, Chairman Martin.
Yeah, just a couple of things, just to be fair, because, I mean, to local governments, it's been a long time ago, but, I mean, things have evolved over the years. I mean, when these fees were put in place, there wasn't Excel spreadsheets, there wasn't a way to calculate things, there wasn't a way to get at it, so people went, hey, it costs $50,000, we'll charge you $500. It costs $100,000, we'll charge you $1,000. So, I mean, I think this is bringing things up to today, so rather than to cast stones at the counties and the cities. Hey, you were doing it the way you were told. To Chairman Williamson's point about the reporting of it, I mean, if you're keeping proper records, which most cities do, and they do their financials at the end of the year, you're going to have an account that says revenue from inspections. You're going to have the expenses. So at least on an annual basis, you'll have the audited financials that would point to that. And if that showed something kind of out of whack, you could dig down into the details, which I think are also public records, without causing them to do anything extra, which would arguably be part of implementing the regulatory fee, which means their regulatory fees could go up. So I think the first case would be just look at the financials, and perhaps it would be a good thing, as the chairman asked, to have a small city, a medium-sized city, and a large city kind of show this group next year, hey, this is how we did it, or at least show your contractor partners, and so.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Follow up, Mr. Chairman of the Ways and Means. Big Chairman, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's a good goal. I think Chairman Powell actually probably brought this up sometime back.
You talking Jay Powell?
Late J.C.
Yeah.
Powell.
That means this is a great bill. Well, I appreciate everybody's patience and indulgence listening to these questions. It's the first time that I've chaired this particular bill. I understand it might have been chaired in another previous subcommittee, but this was a first hearing only. I appreciate the local governments working with the member, the author on this question. Love to have a follow-up meeting on this bill pretty quickly, but maybe we could circle up offline and hear some of your ideas, maybe not making anything onerous, but some way to answer the whole question about being able to sort of account for the how the billing moves forward, if I'm making sense on that. So if there's no other questions from anybody, meetings will be adjourned.
Thank you all.
Okay, excuse me, Mr.
Members of the committee, that one of the reasons we do have one of our subcommittee chairs that ended up, being sick, and he's not able to be here. So we did juggle some of these bills around to try to get them heard, even though they may, vary from the subject matter that which they're assigned to. So thanks for the understanding on that, but a little bit of explanation.
And I appreciate the chairman's flexibility in helping these measures move forward, getting hearings. But is it not true that not only is the author, or the chairman of this subcommittee sick, but his house, all his belongings, where he's staying, his condominium caught on fire last week too.
We did have a fire, yes.
Had a fire there, so he's been.
Well, it was just Chairman Stevens is one of the ones we had to move some stuff because his committee would normally hear some of this, some of these subcommittee would normally hear.
All right, well, let's move on to the ad valorem subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee, and hear Representative Anderson's measure. I believe it's House Bill 912. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I am here this morning to present House Bill 912. We are working this morning off of a substitute bill. The LC number is 500668S. This bill is a follow-up bill to House Bill 121 from last session. 121 was the wake boat bill, but it also authorized the voluntary registration of multi-purpose off-highway vehicles and the ability for people to get a license plate to put on that vehicle and drive it on county roads. In our discussions with the Department of Revenue and others out of session, trying to help them understand legislative intent behind House Bill 121 in their development of rules and procedures for the implementation of that bill, we came up with a discussion regarding taxation on these vehicles. The first concern that I had was that most of the time, if these vehicles are purchased through a dealer, whether it's original or aftermarket, then you pay sales tax on that vehicle, unless you buy it, of course, with a gate card for agricultural purposes. So the question of additional taxation on top of that becomes a little troublesome for me, okay? So what this bill does, just to kind of break it down real quickly, in Section 1, we're just mirroring and cleaning up the definition of multipurpose off-highway vehicles relating to the specifications we put forth in House Bill 121. Section 2 is the actual core of this bill, which adds this classification of vehicles to the list of exemptions from personal property and ad valorem tax. Again, you've already paid sales tax on the vehicle, so why should you have to pay ad valorem tax on it every year when you do your personal property tax? Then we came in and we added, the substitute added Section 3, which was something that was requested by some of our tax assessors, I understand. This would add a sentence to the Department of Natural Resources watercraft registration form, and that sentence would simply say, the marine vessel registered herein may be taxable personal property in the county of Citus to be returned on a PT-50M form annually with the county assessor. And that, in a nutshell, is the bill.
Do we have any questions of the author on the bill? Again, this is first hearing. Is anybody signed up to speak to the bill? Anybody want to speak to the bill? Mr. Chairman?
I just asked, I've spoken with, Chairman Rhodes just briefly, and maybe we can have a conversation offline, Representative, but just with the three different sections here, we touched three different code sections, and, just want to make sure that we're staying, in our lane, if you will. So
Understand, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
have a conversation about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be glad to.
I've got a follow-up question about the boat registration. I'm no expert on this certainly, but is this going to require an additional form for the boat? Maybe the local government can answer this. It's not going to be an additional form because I know that
This is not an additional form. This is simply adding a sentence of notification just to the existing form. There's boat registration and ad valorem taxes related to boats are particularly troublesome. A lot of times people will come in, they'll register their boat, they don't realize that they need to go then to the tax assessor's office, submit the forms to then get that boat in the system and pay property tax with their personal property ad valorem tax every year on that boat. So a lot of times you end up with a registrant who owns a boat, they go to sell the boat, and then in the due diligence part of that transaction, it's determined that there's unpaid taxes, or the unpaid taxes get found in an audit or a review, and it becomes a big problem for the boat owner to come up with all that money at one time if they've missed several years. So this notation here is just an attempt to try to bring that point forward at the time of registration.
So to better educate the boat owner
Exactly,
about the
yes.
responsibility that a county may or do all counties charge ad valorem tax on
They do, yes.
marine personal property?
That is a statutory thing.
Well, I mean, I didn't know if some might not. I don't. I know that some counties do a good job of sleuthing around and look at where through marinas and.
Now, to your question, statutorily they're supposed to. Let's put it that way.
Okay, gotcha. Is any other questions for the author of the bill?
No.
Hearing none. Okay, here we go. Chairman Carpenter.
You know, I hear what you're saying, Representative Anderson, and I think maybe somewhere in the future we can all sit down and have a conversation about, you know, if we're going to tax this thing when I'm purchasing it and you're getting that tax revenue, why are you going to continually tax it while I own it? And we don't do that on cars anymore, but for some reason on boats, on airplanes, all these other things we do. And I think that, you know, as we move forward to continually to grow the sales tax base for local government, we need to have those conversations. And they're going to be uncomfortable, I'm sure, but I think it's a fair argument that if you're going to tax me on the front side, don't tax me the whole till I die. So.
And I do agree, and that is the intent of the bill. Thank you.
Any follow-up questions by anybody? All right, hearing none, with the ad valorem subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee will stand adjourned. Thank you.